Gang, welcome to 5 Builders 1 City. My name is Toadie and I am honored to be a guest builder in this wonderful multiplayer city skylines experience, and we are starting off today's episode by landscaping the area that I will be working in. I have specific inspiration for this area that I will be talking about later, but in general I'm looking to get a nature reserve type park happening right between Slay's area and the beautiful rivers that Sanctum Gamer added previously. You can see me adding small rivers of my own and fussing with water sources. Slowing down the footage here for a quick tip: if you're ever unable to delete a water source for seemingly no reason, lower the land below it, then delete the water source, and simply Control Z the land back into place with the landscaping menu back open. I dip into Sanctum Gamer's river here, hoping eventually to make the transition from his work to mine fairly flawless, then get to work doing the bulk of the landscaping for my little river swamp section. I want this area to feel wetlandsy overall, but with plenty of trees and other vegetation. For both this landscaping and the next bit, I have to ask you to trust the process. I always feel like landscaping starts out looking a bit naff, but the more you tinker and play with it, it really starts to come together. Unpausing the game and watching the flooding and settling of the water is always a hoot, and then we pan over a bit to start another mini landscaping project of extending this mountain range just enough to keep the area's topography interesting. Now, I am certainly not an expert in landscaping, but I love a good challenge, and I think this has turned out well so far, so I'm going to invite you to sit back, enjoy the video, and let's see how well we can transform this region. Before we can start transforming, we need to name and label and claim this region. Let's grab the park zoning tool, and we're just going to get a big old area happening here. You guys can see what we're working with. I feel the need, however, to tidy up some of these lines. To get the name for this park, I took the first 2 letters of each planned guest builder's name and I wiggle wobbled them all around, and I came up with Tilfelle Costo Reserve. Costo makes sense, we're on the coast, and Tilfelle just kind of sounds cool. Next up, in order to get people to be able to get over to this park, we need to do some road connections. Let's grab this road here, get into our network multi-tool, and just create an easy curve between these 2 roads. Czardus, if you're here and if you're watching, I cordially invite you to alter that road as you need. I just wanted to get something connected in there. And then we need an entrance. I might take this road that's here out a little bit further, get it to snap on the 180 degrees, and let's go that far. I don't know if we will use that full length. It does look like quite a bit. And let us get our nature reserve entrance in. Do we want the large entrance or the small entrance? Let's look at them both. Hey! Tilfelle Costo Reserve has reached level 1. Very exciting. If we delete this though, and we put in the small version, I'm kind of for that. Let's keep the small version in. I'm going to slide it over this way a bit, and we of course need some parking. You can see I was looking at parking earlier. We have the parking lot roads, and I think they will work just fine. I'm trying to kind of guess how much parking we will need to put in without it looking excessive, right? Let's start here, and then we will bring this road down and get our parking spaces in. With parking in, I want to show you a trick for how to deal with this little strip in here. I originally went in with surface painter and wanted to do this with it, but then it's got this yucky stuff over this way and it's not easy to fix that. One solution would be if we had ploppable concrete, which we don't. So my original hacky way that I used to fix this would be I would draw these just anywhere just to get some paths down. I'm gonna take this one here and bring it so that it lines up with the side of this concrete this way and kind of smooths it out to be a little bit more straight. and then take this path and bring it over here so that it fills in this concrete over here without any of those like slices or whatever you want to call them in the concrete. The first thing you probably want to put in a park is the pathing, right? So let's go back into our nature reserve menu and grab the nature reserve path. So up here, I am thinking we're going to follow this coastline sort of as well as we can without it feeling too forced. So I'm going to line it up this way, up there, and then come around a nice easy curve over here. Very good. That's how that's going to go up there. Now, prop and tree anarchy, of course, is on because that's the way that I would do things, isn't it? I will turn prop and tree anarchy off. I will grab all of these nodes, move them up one, and then Control Z to get rid of the trees. Need to connect this bit up here. I would like to go for a straight line out of the gate, and then we'll do an easier curve going into the rest of the path. And then coming down here, this is where we're going to change things up a little bit. We've been using the version of the path that is on the ground, right? And anywhere where we build up here, we will continue to do so. But crossing the river and anything below it, we are actually just going to use the elevated version of the path, even if we're sitting right on the ground. Where I'm pulling this idea out of my memory banks from was all like wooden pathing, but on the ground, and it very much looked and felt like this. So everything in here is going to be these wooden paths. I'm going to draw all of the crossings across the river first to try to get them relatively perpendicular, and then we can connect up the paths from there. Now, on this side of the river, I am conflicted on where to cross. Do I cross here? Do I cross over here? I think I'm crossing over here so that we make use of this landmass this way. So let's get a path going over like so. Let's connect these ones up on the side with the version of the path that's on the ground. I think I will make this a curved path to join it. And then coming over here, there is potentially going to be something happening up on this mountain, maybe? So for now, why don't we just make that an easy, just fine. So that'll feel less harsh once we connect it. And then we need to do the paths all in here. Before we start getting into some of the big and cool and fun things in here, we need to get this park starting to level up, so we need some entertainment, right? Why don't we look at what's available to us? We just have some tents and some campfires. I think up here I won't be doing any of the campsites, but there's no reason we can't have a fun little pit stop campfire type place up here. Why don't we put this in? I just want to see, is there a fire inside it? There is. We can have some folks stopping in here for a quick warm-up before they move on. And does this? Yes, we do have some signage that we can put in here as well. Here is your how to get places sign. I now need prop and tree anarchy back on. I'm also tempted, you know what, let's just put in the other sign as well. We also should get some signage happening up here at the very beginning, maybe. There's gonna be so many little details that I'm going to want to get in, but right now I just want to put these down to start getting us some entertainment value. We have this little campfire site as well. Do we think we can maybe add another kind of pit stop feeling area? I think that would work right about here. Let's get it in there, and we can do some picnic tables. Folks can stop, have a bite to eat in here. This area looks so barren without the trees, right? We will be putting so many trees in here, don't you fret. But for now, we'll get some signs happening as well. We could also put down some chairs and these little tables that are closer to the campfire. I realize these logs are intended to be like where you sit around the campfire, right? So why don't we just have these a little bit farther in the back and get the wee little table back here as well. Maybe another chair. These guys could probably stand for a firewood rack in here. I'm just trying to think of, do I want to put it right beside the road and then have the loo? Or I think we'll actually put it a little bit more over to the side here. Yeah, we can just turn it around. So we'll put it over this way, and then we will put the loos beside it. Let's do 2, and finally maybe some extra benches along this path. And then I am going to grab all of these props, and just to make sure, I'm going to go to terrain height. I think they might have already been there, but that works out. Now, if I press go, we have almost exactly the entertainment that we needed. It's like I planned it, and then it tells you that I didn't quite plan it. You're on to me, game. I took a quick boo at the other parks in the city, and no one has used the main park policy yet. So we are going to take advantage of it, at least for now. Of course, anybody else working on the city is very welcome to get rid of this and use it on their own park, but I am wanting to get as many visitors in here as possible, right? Because we need to unlock all of the goodies. While we wait for people to visit Tefele Coastal Reserve, I want to talk about the 3 places that I have taken inspiration from. 2 of them are on this map. Because I am building right next to Sanctum Gamer's river, I am going to almost have to be taking a lot of inspiration from this area, but Sanctum Gamer does everything I wish I could do with landscaping and beautification, and I hope I can at least do this area a little bit of justice by building right next to it. Then sliding over to Slay's area, he's done this really cool thing that you don't see in City Skylines very often, or if at all, and he's got like this marshy vibe going on, and he even has these houses on stilts near the ocean so that they don't get washed away. If I combine this kind of like marshy, swampy feel with the big giant trees and forests that I'm picturing in my head, we come to my 3rd place that I'm taking inspiration from, which is a trip that I took when I was very little. I don't know how old it was. I don't remember much about it, but I was very young. We went out west to British Columbia somewhere. And I just remember being on a hike in this forest with trees that felt like they were thousands of feet tall. They were so tall, but the forest floor was all wet and damp and greenery everywhere and felt swampy and murky and muggy. And I want to recreate that feeling in our nature reserve in City Skylines. Jedi has the marshy vibes going on in his area as well, so we are really working to tie this map together. The other thing that we can look to Slay's area for inspiration for is how he has used the oil and the ore resources painted onto the ground to create a different visual for the ground. So if we come over this way, you can easily see the difference between this right here, which has the oil painted over it, and then this right here that doesn't. And when you come along the river, you can see these lighter patches, which is where Slay has put the ore. I am going to try to recreate that a little bit over this way, but then we're going to have to segue out of it nicely to meet up with Sanctum's river. I think for now, even just that much is certainly a start. Let's see what this ended up looking like. The real test is going to be once we start putting in our trees and rocks, right? What I would like to do though is to get a little bit of oil feeling around here, as well as carrying over this way. But I don't want it to feel like it's just a circle of it, right? And then you might have noticed this path leading to nowhere in the mountain, but over here is going to be the densely oiled up area, and the goal is to make this area feel really kind of wet and gross on the ground. So we will leave it at that for now and get into a bit of detailing. We need to let this game run to allow more visitors through our nature reserve, so I took some time to get a couple basic campgrounds in the park. Now, I'm used to playing this game with anywhere between 5,000 and 9,000 assets, so rocking the vanilla assets is such a fun challenge for me. If you typically play heavily modded like me, it can be great to limit yourself every now and then and see what you can accomplish with far less resources than normal. I find it brings out a different side of my creativity, at least. You can see in each of these areas, I am not putting down any trees or rocks just yet. I also bob out the trees in the campsites so that we can fill them in with our own just a bit later. Anywhere that I'm using the non-elevated version of the path is to allow a break in the fence from the elevated version for our Sims to step into the wild. I'll do my best with decals and grass and such when we get to putting those down to make this transition as natural as possible. The hope with these little kind of scene areas that we're creating here is to be able to go into a first-person view when the park is complete and feel completely immersed in the surroundings. I don't know about you, but the first-person camera mod is my favorite way to view my cities, and it's especially lovely in parks like this, filled with like greenery, nature, all that stuff. We end our time lapse moving over to the small mountain I built up at the beginning of the episode and bring a little lookout spot to life. I think it's high time we find a way to tackle this mountain, but do we climb it or something else? We are going to do something else, of course. Currently, we have built on this side of the little mountain. We want to get to this side of the little mountain. I don't think it's realistic to try to go over top it, right? So I left this path off in a great spot to go underground. Now, if we grab the nature reserve path, and if we do a vanilla unmodded road placement behavior and just go from here to here with anarchy on, it does this. Even if we try to force it to be a tunnel mode, it still does that. I'll even delete this and try to build a new one in tunnel mode, and it just does that. That is because this nature reserve path doesn't have a tunnel mode. A lot of the paths don't have a tunnel mode, but you know what does is the basic regular old pavement path. So I'm going to force tunnel mode immediately and draw it just like that, and it is probably going to look awful. Yes, it looks horrendous, but we're gonna bring this guy back here a little bit. We'll have to tidy up some of the curves, right? And I want to bring him to that height, and then if I want to grab the node that's back here, I have to go into underground mode. And where is it? It's there. And then I'm going to bring it pretty far forward. Let's see what that looks like. Excellent. With a fair bit of toggling or finessing, we'll say, this is going to look all right. I think that kind of looks like it's going, like the path is going pretty straight, right? And then if we come over here, we're going to do the same-ish thing over here. So that node actually looks fine. Let's find this one that's way underground and bring it forward. And do the same thing, try to make it look like this is coming out at a straight angle. Lovely. If we then come over here, because yes, I am this finicky, I want to grab all of these underground nodes. It is only the 3, and I'm going to slope them so that looks more natural. Done with the underground stuff. Can we then get rid of this? And let's grab this type of path. We'll make it elevated. And what happens when we do this? It works. I think that looks okay. Think I'm going to, however, finagle with the curves on them a little bit with move it. That looks a little bit more like what I'm going for. Now, is this, let's just get rid of that. Now over here, the park is going to be a little bit different than what we have seen so far. This ground looks all muddy and murky and awful, right? Well, what we are going to place over here is going to be beautiful and really provide a juxtaposition against the dirty, murky surroundings. So we're going to use this campus trade school path with the trees, and this is going to be much more of a geometrical or symmetrical type build. I'm going out in even measurements all around, and I'm not too sure what else we will be doing. We might even just stick with that, and we are going to place some city park assets in here. One thing is going to pop up. These guys are going to want power, so don't worry, we will definitely be addressing that. But I think this is going to be a fun way to add to the entertainment value of our park without just putting in all of the nature reserve buildings over and over and over again, right? So let's get 4 of these chessboards in here. In the middle, I like these plaza buildings. Can we get 2? We can, and that leaves a very nice space for another path down the middle. They aren't perfectly aligned there. We will get to that. Does this path look the exact same? It does, so we'll just use it. And then I was hoping to get these gazebos in here as well, because they actually do go very well with the nature reserve feel, but because they're going to need power, I'm going to only use them in this area so we don't have to deal with bringing power over. Now the question is, how and where do we want to get this gazebo in? Looking at these paths again, why don't we just take the park path from here? We can do a little bit of a curvy road like so, and then get some gazebos in. There are a couple ways we could do power. We could either do the windmill or we could do the advanced wind turbine in the water. I don't want to mess with the electricity availability too awful much. So do we just want to put one windmill up there? We won't even have to put any power lines down. I get that it might be a little bit strange to see one windmill at like the lower part of a mountain, but gang, we are going to go with it. We're going to suspend disbelief and just be okay with it. Over here, I want to square away this area so that we can do some pretty tree stuff. So let's try this trick that I did earlier. If we just do this, put those down and bring this concrete in like so. We may end up having to double up these paths, but I don't think it'll be the end of the world. Now this isn't the cleanest over on that side, but the more that we kind of play around with it, the better it looks. I think we can get away with that, and we'll put some sort of prop down here to make a nice line. So let me do this all the way around. I would like to get a park info booth, that's this one, in here like so, as well as at least one set of proper loos in the park over here. I think that looks fine, and I'm realizing these trees are kind of in the way, especially with some of the decorating that we're going to be doing with trees later. So you know what? We are going to change this over to be the path without trees, and we will put our own trees in. Hey, so logically it turns out that restrooms need water, so we either steal water from Slay's area and bring it over here, but I don't know if you guys have ever met Slay or watched his videos, and you really should, but he's super intimidating and big and scary, so we're just gonna delete it. No good restrooms for anybody in this park. If you want to use the loo, you have to go and find an outhouse and do the outhouse-ness. This means we can finish off this fence once I get it out of the collision zone, and I'm going to bring it back down to the collision zone, not to be confused with the danger zone, of course. Let's bring it that far, although I don't want it interfering with the bench or the bin. And then we come back over here, and I just want one of these signs that tells you all the ways to go. And there probably could be a couple of these signs in places that say like, hey, this is... Oh, but you know what? It says the word City Park on it, so let's not use that one. Let's go back and use the nature reserve one. And that way, people can be super confused when they come in here. Love that. So this is what we've done with this area. We've got the fence going around most of it, and I think the rest of what's going to happen over here is just going to be trees and rocks, and that is a whole thing. A whole thing that took a fair amount of time, so I think it's best to show you the progress like this. But wait, my friends, we are 24 minutes into the video, and it's high time for the secret call to action. If you're still watching and enjoying, let me know in the comments that you're still here at 24 minutes. You too can be part of the 24-minute gang. Now, focusing back on these rocks and trees, I'm a bit stubborn of an old bat, and rather than using the forest brush or the brush through landscaping tools, I use Move It's copy and paste to do all my tree work. Couple that in with some rock placement that turned out pretty swell, and we've landed with this nature reserve. Somewhere during this process, we also unlocked the Colossal City milestone. I swear, I haven't placed a single house, but now the main builders have a few more options unlocked when they pick the save back up. And hey, if you're here from one of the main builders channels, shout out to Czardus, Jedi, Overcharged Egg, Slay, and Yumbo. I invite you to consider subscribing here. I publish a variety of city skylines content between Let's Plays, mod tutorials, general tips and tricks, and even the odd challenge video. I also live stream on Twitch under the same name, ToadieYPQ. I've recently been dipping my toes into a variety of games, currently growing a factory in Factorio. If you enjoy simulation and management games in general, come say hi. Finally, I have also started live streaming here on YouTube, focusing on city skylines. Even more reason to subscribe. This project is really coming along and we are nearing the end point. I think we've done quite a bit of work, but I have a to-do list of everything that's left. Number one on the to-do list is we have not put any of this low vegetation or low foliage in amongst the forest. So we are going to go through and just kind of do so in a few spots that I know we will see, like when we're doing our first person camera pass through. I like to combine the different vegetations. This one I'm going to reserve for a different spot, but yes, this is that other one that I want. And then if I really wanted to make life easy, I could just grab props, grab all of those that I've done, and I can just kind of filter them in around through the forest. And then when you're looking from farther away, it looks pretty darn good. And with these slightly darker vegetations in here, we are done this side of the park. I specifically chose not to do any up here because this area is supposed to be a little bit less murky, right? But we are going to swing over this way. And what we're going to do over here is use a combination of this slightly darker, heavier vegetation and then get into the high vegetation as well. The goal on this side of the mountain is to make it feel really thick and muddy and gross and just sweaty, awful green gunk everywhere, but in a really pretty way, right? I think, in my humble opinion, that this looks pretty rad when we do that. So I will get this done through kind of the whole little forest area over here. The other tool that we will make use of in this area is the dirt decals. We have 2 dirt decals installed and we are going to use them to our best ability, just again to add a little bit more texture over this side. What does this one's a little bit brighter, so I might stray away from it a little bit, but I think that looks all right. I think over here is really going to be where these thrive. If we kind of tuck them back into the rocks and just place them sort of ad hoc, that white kind of dot is very identifying in here, right? So it's easy to make it kind of look patterned. So I have to actually pay attention while I'm placing them. I think that's okay. And then what we're going to follow up with is the ruined texture over here. As far as I understand, all of the builders are using the same theme, which is just Laviente. Gonna pronounce that poorly. So this should look the same for anybody glancing at this. I like that quite a bit. We are also going to come over here to this main side of that little mountain and do some dirt decaling on this side of things. We already have done so going into the water to kind of recreate what Sanctum Gamer had done. And now we can continue it up onto this little island. I've intentionally left this island a bit bare. I think it's good to have some blank space every so often in a build to help the eye see a difference. We will do the same thing, come over and fill in this bit that was previously the oil texture, but we'll get some ruined texture in here as well. Try to kind of mix it up a little bit. A couple more things on our final tidy up list, and one of those things is just some small rock placement. I did do larger rock placement through my big kind of time-lapse show off there, but we haven't really placed a bunch of small rocks into the forest. Boulders, I guess you would call them. I like to have them just every now and then, again, for that first person view when people are walking through this, they're going to see that, and it's going to really help with the immersion, right? So just tuck them back into the trees. Couple smaller rocks nearby. I could go into the Parklife rocks. The nature reserve has some really tiny rocks that are great for detailing, but because for one, we want to get this video out and I don't want to waste your time, but we also really are, this is kind of more macro, right? This isn't the mini micro detailing. This is just to be able to catch at a glance and say, oh, hey, that's in there. So we don't need to get super specific with it. I also realized that we did do a couple like main campsites where lots of people are staying and that sort of thing, but we haven't really done any little one-off campsites. I'm sure that there's people out there in the world who would prefer to travel alone, like me. So we can set up a couple. Honestly, is even just that enough? Maybe we'll give them at least a fire pit, like so. And now this guy would have had to hop the fence to go and set up his camper there, but I'm sure that there are people out there in the world who would have done such a thing. So why don't we come over here and have someone who's not hopping the fence and have a couple people there. A few fountains and signs where paths cross so that people know where they're going. And finally, I had put in this rock climbing building recently because it was, of course, the last thing that unlocked. So I think across the path from it might be a good place to put in just like a little playground, because this is this upper section where we are saying that it's not so murky and the ground isn't so damp and dingy, right? That means this equipment won't like sink into the ground, which is why I was holding off on doing a lot of this sort of thing elsewhere in the park. But I think we could get a good few play sets out here. Every parent loves to be able to have their kids playing on the one side of the path while they head over to the other side and climb a rock or two, right? I have one last pièce de résistance that is sort of my like signature that I do in builds like this. I like to change it to nighttime and come into our search and find the floodlights. These are so much fun to put in and around your big rock structures. If you just kind of tuck them into the crevasse, they light up the rocks in a way that makes me at least really happy. Let me get a few in here and show you. Doesn't that just look kind of neat? I'm always a big fan of this, so I will come around to just the bigger rock structures. We've obviously got these ones. Maybe I'll only do the two there. We can also do this near this waterfall that we put in. Yes, I mean, it's obvious what it does, right? It lights up the rocks, but I love it. I love it so much. I'm going to put a few in around this pond as well. I like to think of this pond as sort of a more main feature of the area. What do we have over here? It's actually kind of hard for even me to see what's going on. Let's get one back in here. And now I think that looks just lovely. I can't believe I'm saying this, but that concludes our Tilfelle Costo Nature Reserve build. Let's finally hop into a first-person view of some of these paths. I can't wait to see how this turned out. My goal with this build was to bring in the swampy wetlands vibes from other areas of this city and combine it with a heavy forest to bring to life a vague memory of a murky wooded hike from my childhood. And I think we did just that. If you've enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. That directly tells YouTube to share it with more people out there. And of course, subscribe for more City Skylines content like this. On screen is the first episode in my current playthrough of City Skylines, where we are creating the city of Derwentport. Make sure to watch through that playlist so that you're up to date, and gang, I will catch you next time.